Somewhere in the glaciers of the Alps, beneath a layer of ice that has been there for thousands of years, a man has been lying for 5,000 years. His accidental discovery shook the entire scientific world, but along with the discoveries came strange deaths. What is the ancient hunter hiding? Coincidence or curse? Today, we will delve into the mystery of Ötzi, the Iceman who, even after death, refuses to let go of his researchers. When, in early September 1991, Helmut Simon and his wife Erika decided to walk across the Finnispilz Glacier in the Alps, they could hardly have imagined that they would become part of one of the most mysterious stories of the 20th century. The tourists from Nuremberg set off on a walk across the silent ice fields when, amid the white silence, they stumbled upon something strange, a brownish object peeking out of the ice. At first glance, it looked like trash or animal remains. However, upon closer inspection, Helmut realized that it was a human body. It was unusual. The skin was shriveled like parchment. The flesh was exposed in places, and the face looked like a silent mask from ancient times. Next to it lay fragments of a wooden bow and something resembling leather clothing. Simon immediately reported the find to the police. The authorities initially decided that these were the remains of a missing climber, perhaps one who had died several decades ago. However, when experts began to extract the body, it turned out to be more deeply frozen than expected. It took days to carefully free the remains from the ice. The body was transported to the University of Innsbruck, where Professor Konrad Spindler was the first to voice a stunning hypothesis. They were looking at a man who had lived several thousand years ago. Further research confirmed the incredible. The mummified man had died around 3300 BC. He was more than 5,000 years old. This is how the world learned about the existence of Otzi, the oldest naturally preserved human in Europe. His story began in the icy silence, and even then, at the moment of his discovery, was shrouded in mystery. Otzi was not just a chance find. His clothes, tools, and weapons all spoke of a man with knowledge and skills lost over thousands of years. It is amazing how thoroughly he was equipped for life in the harsh mountain conditions. Scientists determined that Otzi was wearing clothes made from the skins of several animals. His jacket was sewn from goat skins, and his pants were made from deer skins. His shoes were a true masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Inside, there was a layer of dry grass for warmth, and outside, there was leather tied with sinew. Even modern mountaineers would be impressed by such an outfit. One of the most striking finds was a copper axe. This tool made Otzi unique among other archaeological discoveries. Copper was an extremely valuable metal at the time, requiring complex processing. The presence of an axe indicates Otzi's high social status. He may have been a leader or shaman of his community. His body has preserved many tattoos, more than 60 lines and crosses tattooed on his skin. Interestingly, these marks were located in places corresponding to modern acupuncture points. Some scientists have suggested that Otzi used tattoos to relieve chronic pain, possibly caused by arthritis. Research has shown that Otzi suffered serious injuries shortly before his death. He had broken ribs and a flint arrowhead stuck in his left shoulder. Analysis of the contents of his stomach showed that he had eaten meat and grains shortly before his death, and had drunk water from a mountain stream. Otzi's death was probably violent. The arrow damaged an artery, leading to rapid blood loss. However, Why was he alone on the glacier, with no signs of a struggle nearby? Why was the body so well preserved, despite being exposed? These questions are still debated among scientists. Moreover, analysis of his clothing and weapons showed that some items had been damaged or hastily repaired. Perhaps he was fleeing from pursuers, had been exiled, or had been ambushed. Perhaps death overtook him when he was already weakened and wounded. Biochemical analysis of his teeth and bones has revealed Ötzi's origins. He was born and raised in what is now South Tyrol, not far from where he died. Unique markers have been found in his DNA that are still present in some alpine populations today. Otzi was short, about 160 centimeters tall, and thin. He was about 45 years old at the time of his death, which was considered a respectable age in the Copper Age. Thus, Otzi is not just an ancient hunter. He is a man who carries within himself an entire era frozen in the permafrost. His life and death have become a bridge connecting us to the distant past. But along with this bridge came mysteries, one of which is a series of strange deaths that began shortly after his discovery. The first death connected with Otzi occurred almost 10 years after his discovery. It was this death that sparked talk of a possible curse of the mummy. Helmut Simon, the tourist who first spotted the frozen body on the Finnelsjök Glacier, remained in the spotlight for many years after the discovery. He often participated in conferences, gave interviews, and proudly talked about his contribution to science. But in the fall of 2003, Simon disappeared. In early October, he set off on a solo hike in the Kitzsteinhorn Glacier area in Austria. An experienced mountaineer, he had been to these places many times before. However, this time he did not return. A search operation was launched involving rescuers, police, and volunteers. Only after several days was Helmut's body found. He had fallen from an icy cliff and died from his injuries. The incident immediately attracted the attention of the press. Journalists recalled his connection with the mummy Otzi and began to speculate about the curse of the ancient gods or the hunter's revenge. Articles full of mysterious hints filled the pages of European newspapers. Adding spice to the situation was the fact that just before his death, Simon had been involved in a legal battle over the ownership of the mummy. The authorities of South Tyrol fought to establish a museum for Otzi on their territory and obtain the right to income from exhibitions. Helmut and Erika Simon considered themselves the rightful discoverers and demanded official recognition and compensation. Unsurprisingly, the tragedy fueled rumors of a curse. The idea took root in the popular imagination. Find the mummy, disturb its ancient peace, and pay with your life. Although the objective causes of Simon's death were clear, a fall in difficult weather conditions, the atmosphere surrounding Otzi began to thicken noticeably. The first ominous incident became the starting point for subsequent events. With each new death among people connected with the study of the mummy, the curse hypothesis seemed less and less absurd. It was as if an ancient hunter from the glacial desert did not want to forgive those who disturbed his eternal sleep. Thus began a chain of tragedies that still provoke debate. Mere coincidence or something more? Further events only added fuel to the fire. After the tragic death of Helmut Simon, a series of strange deaths continued to gather momentum, as if an invisible hand of fate was pulling its victims from among those who had ever come into contact with Otzi. Next was Rainer Henn, a pathologist who had been studying the mummy's remains. He was the first to perform an autopsy on Otzi, seeking to determine the cause of the ancient man's death. In the early 2000s, Rayner died in a car accident while returning home after giving a lecture on his involvement in the mummy's research. His car suddenly skidded on a wet road and crashed into a tree. The official cause of death was an accident, but journalists once again began whispering about a curse. Then tragedy struck Dieter Warnecke, one of the first guides and conductors who helped find and study the site where Otzi was found. In 2003, the same year as Simon, Warnecke was caught in an avalanche and died in the mountains. He was an experienced mountain guide who knew the area like the back of his hand, which made his death even more frightening. Kurt Fritz, the guide who accompanied the first group of researchers to Otzi's body, also died tragically. He died in an accident when an avalanche hit his group in the Alps. Kurt was the only one who did not survive, although all other members of the team remained alive. This circumstance only fueled rumors. Could it be that a curse was choosing its victims? Tom Lawler, a filmmaker who made documentaries about the discovery and research of Otzi, also joined this tragic list. Lawler battled a severe form of brain cancer and died several years after working on the film about the mummy. His death was seen as another link in the sinister chain. According to journalistic investigations, a total of 7 people connected in some way to Otzi died within a short period of time. The causes of death varied: accidents, illness, tragic circumstances. But they all fueled the image of the curse of the Iceman. Each new death added to the atmosphere of horror. The media picked up on the story, creating a sense of growing panic. Articles appeared with headlines such as "The Revenge of the Ancient Hunter" and "Otzi Kills Again." Journalists compared Otzi's curse to myths about the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb, drawing parallels between the two mysterious series of deaths. Some researchers tried to rationalize the situation. They pointed out that many of the victims were elderly people who traveled extensively and exposed themselves to danger. Mountains, extreme weather conditions, stress, and physical exertion all increase the risk of tragedy. But for the general public, rational explanations seemed boring. The story of an ancient curse was too appealing to dismiss, especially when the facts seemed to add up to a frightening picture. Among other stories, there were even recollections of unusual incidents involving visitors to the museum in Bolzano, where Otzi's mummified body is now kept. Some tourists complained of feeling unwell after their visit, although the medical reasons for their condition were quite mundane: fatigue, acclimatization, or emotions. Thus, the tragic chain of deaths, real and confirmed, became the basis for one of the most mystical myths of the late 20th and early 21st centuries: the myth of the curse of the Iceman Otzi. Amid the growing mystique surrounding Otzi, scientists felt the need to provide rational explanations for what was happening. Their task was not only to maintain scientific objectivity, but also to curb the wave of irrational fear spreading through the media and society. First, the experts looked at the statistics. In the decade after the mummy was found, hundreds of people were involved in its research, transport, preservation, and study. Only a few of them died. Considering the average age of the project participants, the nature of their professions, and their working conditions, the number of deaths was quite normal. Professor Klaus Euger from the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Innsbruck pointed out, "When you work with a large number of people over many years, tragedies are inevitable. It's not a curse, it's life." His opinion was supported by other experts. The researchers also looked at the causes of death for each person connected to Ötzi. For example, Helmut Simon's death was explained as an accident in the mountains. Rainer Henn died in a car accident caused by slippery roads. Kurt Fritz died in an avalanche. The risks of avalanches are well known to all climbers. Tom Loeller died of a brain tumor, which was in no way related to the mummy. Scientific circles emphasize that Ötzi did not possess any magical properties. His body was a unique object for archaeology, medicine, and history, but not a source of supernatural threats. Studies of the mummy's tissues showed that they did not contain any bacteria or viruses capable of causing disease in modern humans. Moreover, the strictest precautions were taken during the study of the mummy. A special microclimate in the storage facility, strict sanitary treatment, and minimal physical contact with the body. All this minimized any potential risks of infection. The psychological component was considered separately. Psychologists pointed to the effect of self-fulfilling fears. When a person believes in a curse, their subconscious begins to perceive every little thing as confirmation of this belief. In stressful situations, this can lead to poor health, behavioral errors, and, in extreme cases, tragedy. Some experts also pointed out the influence of the media on the perception of reality. Sensational headlines, dramatic articles, and reports create an image of a mystical threat in the minds of the audience, even when the facts suggest otherwise. Interestingly, similar cases of mystification have occurred before. The most famous example is the Curse of the Pharaohs, associated with the tomb of Tutankhamun. Back then, at the beginning of the 20th century, the deaths of several members of an archaeological expedition also became the basis for a legend, although most of their colleagues lived long lives. Thus, the scientific view of the situation with Otzi remains firm. There can be no question of any real curse. All deaths have logical explanations, and the myth of the revenge of the ice hunter is just an example of how ancient fears come to life in the modern imagination. Nevertheless, even the most skeptical scientists admit that Otzi's story remains fascinating, and not only because of his age or state of preservation, but also because of the mystical aura that, contrary to common sense, continues to surround this man from the depths of millennia. More than 30 years have passed since Otzi saw the light of day again after 1,000 years of sleep in the ice of the Alps. During this time, he has become not just an archaeological artifact, but a cultural phenomenon. Today, Otzi's body is kept in a specially built museum in Bolzano, South Tyrol. The museum maintains unique conditions, a temperature of about -6 degrees Celsius and a humidity of 99% to preserve the mummy in its natural state. Thousands of tourists come here every year to see this man from the distant past with their own eyes. Otzi has given science invaluable knowledge about the lives of people in the Copper Age. Thanks to the analysis of his remains, it has been possible to understand what diseases existed at that time, what metalworking technologies were used, what clothing looked like, and what foods ancient Europeans ate. In addition, his discovery sparked a wave of interest in archaeology, history, and even genetics. Modern DNA research on Otzi has revealed unexpected facts about his family ties to some European residents. However, despite all the scientific achievements, the shadow of a curse continues to follow the name of the Iceman. Stories of strange deaths, strange incidents in the mountains, and mystical speculation have all become an integral part of the legend surrounding him. Some believe that the very fact that the ancient hunter's peace was disturbed sets off a chain of unpredictable events. Others see in this a simple human tendency to look for secrets where chance reigns. Be that as it may, Ötzi's story reminds us of the fragile line between science and myth, between facts and faith. He has become a bridge not only between eras, but also between rational and mystical perceptions of the world. The Iceman from the Alps, frozen 5,000 years ago, has forever changed our view of the past and may continue to influence the present. This is his true legacy.